Well, Ambassador Jones, you've been in and around government since the Johnson administration. How has government changed, and then how has that changed our role in the world?
Well, I think politics has changed. It's much meaner and more ideological than it was. When I broke into the White House and then to politics in Congress, we had the belief that our job after the election was to get things done, to help the country, to help move us forward. It wasn't any particular ideology. And so we worked across party lines on everything. When Lyndon Johnson had a very productive Congress after his '64 election, and yet we never sent a piece of legislation up until the president had Everett Dirksen and Charlie Halleck or Jerry Ford, the leaders of the Republican Party in the House and the Senate, down to the White House to say what we were planning to do, what would it take to get Republicans on board, trying to accommodate them, so that when the bills came out, you had a strong bipartisan support for it, which is important in the country because you can't pass legislation or you can't implement legislation, laws, unless you have strong support in the country. That's changed now, and so what you have now is changed in a couple of ways. Number one, the most important elections now are the primaries, where very few people vote. Average of 15% of the people vote. The people who vote in primaries are predominantly ideologically moved, either on the left of the political spectrum or on the far right. And once those people get nominated and then elected, generally in gerrymandered congressional districts, they are intimidated by any thought of moving away from that ideological purity. So as a result, you have a situation where Republicans and Democrats don't talk to each other. They actually can get chastised if they're seen fraternizing with the other members of the other party too much. And that does not make for getting bipartisan solutions to national problems. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a phase we're going through. Eventually, you'll have middle class, or the middle part of the spectrum, people who are not either left or right, but just want to see government work properly, and who are voting less and less these days. Eventually, you're going to see them vote more and vote out everybody, and that's when I think things will change.
Does the gridlock we're seeing in our nation's capital, has it hurt our economy?
I think it has hurt our economy in a number of ways. For example, we need to change our tax laws, reform them, make them simpler, and have a tax law system so that the lower end of the economic scale has a better chance to be a full participant in our economy. That's not possible now because you can't change things as fundamental as tax without Democrats and Republicans both agreeing that this needs to be done and we need to work together to do it. It's changed in other ways in our dealings with the global community by being paralyzed on policy, foreign policy I'm speaking of now. That creates questions and doubts among our allies and adversaries, and as a result, we have trouble putting coalitions together on a global basis. So yes, I think it does hurt us.
Mm-hmm. Mexico and Canada remain not only our states, but our countries, one of the largest trading partners. How important are those relationships as we go forward in this global economy?
Well, I think they're very important to us. Right now, Canada and Mexico are our two largest markets in the world. Our trade with Mexico, for example, is more than the European Union combined. It's more than all the BRIC countries, Russia, Brazil, India, and China combined. It is a very important part of our economy. Going forward, the way we grow an economy basically is to develop export markets. We can't consume everything we need to grow as an economy, so we have to get consumers elsewhere. The way you do that is to become more competitive. To become more competitive, you need to take the synergies of Canada, U.S., and Mexico, put them together, integrate them in energy, integrate them in regulations and things like that, without giving up sovereignty, but integrate the economies. And then you become more competitive. For example, on energy, there's a dramatic move in energy, oil and gas production with fracking and shale oil and gas production. And there has been a great reform on energy policy in Mexico. So if you put Canada, U.S., and Mexico's energy resources together, we would be stronger than any other part of the world, Middle East, the OPEC countries, or what have you. What does that mean to us? It means that we can cut the cost of manufacturing considerably, and that makes us more competitive on an economic basis. In foreign policy, it means we really have power that we didn't have before. For example, Putin taking his troops into Ukraine and threatening the Baltic states, such as Lithuania, etc. He can do that because he knows that our sanctions against Russia are not likely to be effective because Europe is so dependent upon energy products from Russia. If we were able to combine our energy resources and integrate them in North America, we would not only would be producing enough for ourselves, but we could supply other parts of the world, such as the Europeans, and give them comfort that if they joined us in these sanctions against bullies like Putin, that they would not be cut off from energy supplies. And that gives us a very strong arm on foreign policy. So for a whole variety of reasons, integrating our economies is really important for our future.
There's certainly a very fiery immigration debate going on in our country right now. Could we be focusing on the wrong parts of immigration when we debate immigration currently?
Well, I think there's always a fear of people coming in and taking our jobs, or they're different than we are, what have you, and that creates a political backlash. The fact of the matter is we need to have an immigration policy that makes sense, that faces reality. For example, it was 2 or 3 years ago I checked the numbers on service workers, restaurant workers and what have you. We had a need in this country for 500,000 service workers because that was what the shortfall was from U.S. labor force and what we needed. We had a legal quota for 50,000, so 10 times more workers needed than we legally allowed in this country. So what happens, you get illegal immigration. Folks from South America and elsewhere looking for jobs and willing to work hard, and they came in illegally. If we had a quota system that faced the reality of what our economy needed, and then you add to that the technology of being able to police that legal immigration system, you have a workforce then that can really make the economy hum. So yes, I think we're looking at immigration from the standpoint of fear and not from the standpoint of opportunity.
And when you look just at the demographics of our country, we need those immigrants because we are a graying population.
We're an aging population very, very fast. The first baby boomers really started retiring just very few short years ago, and it's accelerating now. The baby boomers are retiring at massive rates, which means we're going to have fewer workers trying to produce and grow our economy at a time when we need more workers. Countries like Mexico have a young workforce. They're a younger economy or younger population than we are, and they want to work. And so we need to have a legal way to make up for that shortfall of all the people who are retiring to keep our economy going. And it just really appalls me that Congress will not talk to each other and come up with some some solutions. It does not have to be liberal or conservative. It just makes practical sense. What do we need and how do we do it?
Let's talk a little bit about technology. You mentioned the resurgence of some American manufacturing here in the country. How important is the development of technology and really having the skilled workforce to use that technology
Right.
when we talk about global trade?
I think it's absolutely necessary. Our economy should have slowed down in the mid-1990s because we started seeing a change in demographics and what have you. The only reason it didn't was technology, the growth of the internet and various offshoots of the internet system. And that needs another round of technology, and it's out there. We just have to keep working toward it. But it's very, very important. If we're going to grow, we have to have a combination of an educated population, a population within the parameters of a workforce, and technology.
Now, you're speaking later today here at the West Watkins International School of Trade Development, and there will be a fair amount of students in that audience. What is your message to the young person who's just at the front end of their career about how they go forward?
I guess I would have two messages. One is think beyond Oklahoma, think beyond the United States, and think in terms of global economy, because your economic opportunities are going to prosper or decline based upon how well we do in a global economy going forward. So that's one part. That also means think languages and think cultures. You can learn so much about a culture by knowing the language, and if we know the language and we know the culture, then there's a very good opportunity that we can compete in all these cultures where the markets are growing. That's one message. The second message is to get involved in politics, not necessarily to run for office, but to be good citizens and to understand the issues that are facing the country. And don't drop out of that, but hold your political leaders to a strict and a stern test. Are you doing what's right for the country? Are you doing what's right for the state, et cetera? And really get involved, basically.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for your insights.
Thank you. Thank you.